The man walked onto the America's Got Talent stage and stood in silence. Simon Cowell saw something in his eyes. And the show stopped. The cameras were rolling. Thousands in the audience. Millions watching at home. Terry Crews had just introduced the next contestant with his usual energy, and now a man in his late 40s stood center stage under the lights. He wasn't dressed for television. Faded jeans. A plain gray shirt that had seen too many washes. Work boots that had walked too many miles. His hands hung at his sides, trembling slightly. His face carried the kind of exhaustion that sleep can't fix. Simon Cowell sat at the judge's desk in his usual position, arms crossed, ready to deliver the sharp critique that had made him famous. But something made him pause. Something in the way the man stood there, not moving, not speaking, just staring at the floor. "What's your name?" Howie Mandel asked, breaking the awkward silence. The man looked up slowly. Robert Mitchell. "I'm from Ohio." "And what are you going to do for us today, Robert?" Heidi Klum asked with her warm smile. Robert's jaw tightened. His eyes swept across the judges' panel, landing on Simon. When he spoke, his voice was rough, like someone who hadn't used it properly in years. "Before I perform," Robert said, "I need to tell you something. I need you to understand, the moment I lost myself." The audience shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't how auditions worked. Contestants sang or danced or did magic tricks. They didn't stand under the lights and talk about losing themselves. Simon uncrossed his arms. His eyes narrowed, studying Robert's face with sudden intensity. And in that moment, captured by camera 3 in perfect focus, something changed in Simon's expression. Recognition. Pain. Understanding. Cameras were live when a man stood silently on the AGT stage, and Simon Cowell had to stop the show because he recognized the pain in that man's eyes. Simon's hand rose sharply. "Hold on. Stop. Everyone stop." The production assistants backstage looked at each other in confusion. The control room erupted into chaos, producers shouting into headsets, directors asking what was happening, nobody knowing the protocol for this moment. "Simon?" Sofia Vergara leaned toward him, concerned. "What's wrong?" Simon didn't answer her. He was staring at Robert with an intensity that made the entire theater fall silent. When he finally spoke, his voice carried none of its usual sharp edge. "You don't need to perform," Simon said quietly. "Not yet. First, I need to hear what you just said. About the moment you lost yourself. Because I can see it in your eyes, Robert. And I think everyone needs to hear this story." Robert's face crumpled. His hand went to his chest, gripping his shirt. "I wasn't supposed to talk about it. I was just supposed to sing. That's what they told me backstage. Just sing and..." "Forget what they told you," Simon interrupted, standing up from the judge's desk. "This is more important." The audience was completely silent now. 3,000 people holding their breath. Howie, Heidi, and Sophia exchanged glances, confused but sensing something profound was happening. Simon walked out from behind the judge's desk. Not toward the stage. Not toward Robert. He just stood there in the space between the judges and the audience, his arms at his sides, his entire posture saying, "I'm listening. Really listening. Tell us," Simon said. "Tell us about that moment." Simon stopped the show. No one knew what was happening. To understand what happened next, you need to understand what happened 6 years earlier. Robert Mitchell wasn't always the broken man standing on that stage. In 2017, he was a firefighter in Dayton, Ohio. 22 years on the force. Decorated. Respected. The kind of guy everyone in the station counted on. He had a wife, Angela, who taught 3rd grade. 2 kids, Emma, age 12, and Lucas, age 9. They lived in a modest house on a quiet street. Nothing fancy. But it was theirs. Robert would come home from his shifts and find Angela in the kitchen, the kids doing homework at the table, and everything felt solid. Safe. like the world made sense. Robert had been a singer in his youth. Nothing professional, just local bars and weddings, the kind of small-town performance circuit where you make enough for gas money and free drinks. He had a good voice, deep, soulful, the kind that made people stop talking and listen. But he'd put it away when he joined the fire department. Singing was a hobby. Family was everything. On March 14, 2017, Robert was working a regular shift. It was a quiet Tuesday. He and his crew were doing equipment checks, shooting the breeze, talking about the NCAA tournament. Normal. Safe. The call came in at 2:47 p.m. Structure fire. Residential. East Dayton. Robert's crew responded. Standard procedure. They'd done it 1,000 times. Pull up to the house, assess the situation, get the water going, check for people inside. The house was a single-story ranch style, flames already visible through the upstairs windows. A woman was screaming on the lawn. The homeowner, hysterical, pointing at the house, shouting that her elderly father was still inside, wheelchair-bound, second bedroom on the right. Robert and his partner, Tommy Chen, went in. Visibility near zero from the smoke. Heat pressing down from above like a physical weight. They found the bedroom. Found the wheelchair. The elderly man was unconscious but alive. They got him out. Handed him to the paramedics. Success. Another life saved. Another routine call. But Tommy had seen something. A flash of movement deeper in the house. Maybe a pet. Maybe nothing. But Tommy was young, 26, eager, convinced there was still someone in there. I saw something move, Tommy said, breathing hard, his face streaked with soot. Back bedroom. I'm going back in. Wait for backup, Robert told him. Structure's not stable. Wait. But Tommy was already moving, disappearing back into the smoke. Robert tried to follow. He made it 3 steps inside when he heard it. That terrible groaning sound that every firefighter knows. The sound of structural failure. The ceiling beginning to collapse. He had maybe 2 seconds to make a choice. Go after Tommy or get out. He went after Tommy. He made it halfway down the hallway when the ceiling came down. A beam caught him across the shoulder, drove him to the ground. The heat became unbearable. The smoke was everywhere. He couldn't see. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't move. He called out for Tommy. No answer. Just the roar of fire, and the cracking of wood and the awful realization that he was going to die in this house. The backup crew pulled him out 30 seconds later. Saved his life. Found Tommy's body an hour after the fire was contained. He'd been trapped in the back bedroom, overcome by smoke, never made it back out. Robert spent 3 weeks in the hospital. Second-degree burns. Smoke inhalation. Shoulder injury that would require surgery. But the physical injuries weren't the problem. The problem was what happened in his head. He couldn't sleep. When he closed his eyes, he saw that hallway. Felt that beam across his shoulder. Heard Tommy's voice saying, I saw something move. Over and over and over. He'd wake up screaming, drenched in sweat, Angela holding him, while he sobbed. He tried to go back to work. Made it 2 shifts before having a panic attack in the truck bay, hyperventilating so badly they almost called an ambulance. The department put him on medical leave. PTSD, the therapist said. Survivor's guilt. Depression. Anxiety. A whole catalog of terms that meant, you're broken and we don't know if you'll ever be fixed. The medication helped sometimes. The therapy helped sometimes. But most of the time, Robert just felt numb. Disconnected. Like he was watching his own life through a window, unable to reach through the glass and participate. Angela tried. God, she tried. She held him when he cried. She made appointments he didn't keep. She told him it wasn't his fault. But Robert couldn't hear it. Couldn't feel it. He'd failed Tommy. He'd made the wrong choice. And nothing anyone said could change that fact. The worst part was the kids. Emma and Lucas watching their father disappear into himself. Robert couldn't play with them anymore. Couldn't help with homework. Couldn't do the normal dad things that used to come so easily. He'd sit at the dinner table and stare at his plate, barely hearing the conversation around him. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this performance is still ahead. One night, 18 months after the fire, Angela sat down across from Robert at that dinner table after the kids had gone to bed. She had tears in her eyes. "I can't do this anymore," she said quietly. "I've tried. I've given you space. I've given you time. But Rob, you're not here. You haven't been here for over a year. The kids ask me every day when their dad is coming back. And I don't know what to tell them anymore. I'm trying," Robert said, his voice hollow. "I know you are. But trying isn't enough. You need to decide if you want to come back to us. Really come back. Or if you're going to stay in that hallway forever." She filed for divorce 3 weeks later. Robert didn't fight it. He moved into a small apartment across town. Saw the kids every other weekend, though even that felt like going through the motions. Emma stopped trying to talk to him. Lucas started having nightmares. Robert got a job doing construction work. Manual labor. Something that kept his body tired enough that maybe he wouldn't think so much. It didn't work. He still saw Tommy's face every time he closed his eyes. The singing had stopped completely. The one thing he'd loved, the one piece of himself that had survived the fire department, and marriage and fatherhood, gone. He couldn't even listen to music without feeling that hollow ache in his chest. "I lost myself in that hallway," Robert would tell the therapist during his mandatory sessions. "The person I was died in that fire with Tommy. And I don't know how to bring him back." For 5 years, Robert existed. That's the only word for it. He wasn't living. He was just going through the motions. Work, apartment, occasional visits with kids who barely recognized him anymore, sleep that never came easy. And then, 6 months ago, something happened. Robert was at a construction site, taking his lunch break in his truck, when a song came on the radio. An old one. Something he used to sing back in his 20s. He'd heard it 1,000 times since the fire, and always changed the station immediately. But this time, for reasons he couldn't explain, he let it play. And sitting in that truck, covered in dust, exhausted and broken, Robert started to sing along. Quietly at first. Then louder. His voice was rusty, cracked, nothing like it used to be. But it was there. Still there. He cried the whole time. But he sang. That night he pulled out his old guitar from the back of his apartment closet. Tuned it. Played a few chords. His fingers remembered even if his heart felt dead. He started singing again. Not performing. Just in his apartment. Late at night when he couldn't sleep. Songs from when he was young. Songs from before everything fell apart. It didn't fix anything. The PTSD didn't magically disappear. The guilt didn't evaporate. But for the first time in 5 years, Robert felt something other than numbness. He felt something. His daughter Emma visited one weekend and heard him playing guitar through the apartment door. She knocked hesitantly. "Dad? Was that you singing?" Robert opened the door. "Yeah. Sorry if I was too loud." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "I haven't heard you sing in. I don't even remember how long. I forgot you could." Something broke open in Robert's chest. He picked up the guitar. "Want to hear more?" They sat together for 2 hours. Just singing. Just being father and daughter again. When Emma left, she hugged him tighter than she had in 5 years. A week later, Robert saw the America's Got Talent audition flyer. He almost threw it away. But Emma's voice kept echoing. "I forgot you could." Now, standing on that stage under Simon's intense gaze, Robert understood why he'd come. "I lost myself in a hallway during a fire," Robert said, his voice breaking. "I lost my partner. My family. My voice. Everything that made me who I was. For 5 years I've been a ghost. But 6 months ago, I started singing again. And my daughter, she remembered who I used to be. This audition isn't about winning. It's about proving to her, and to myself, that the man who died in that fire can come back. Backstage, producers were begging him to continue, but he didn't. Simon walked onto the stage. The entire theater gasped. He stopped directly in front of Robert. "I know that hallway," Simon said quietly, his voice thick. "I've never been in a fire. But I know what it's like to lose yourself. To become someone you don't recognize. And I know how hard it is to find your way back." He placed his hand on Robert's shoulder. "Sing for your daughter. Sing for Tommy. Sing for the man you used to be." Robert sang. A song about coming home. His voice cracked and broke and soared. The audience wept. The judges wept. Simon stood beside him on stage the entire time, refusing to return to his desk. When the final note faded, Simon walked to the judge's desk and slammed his hand on the golden buzzer. Share and subscribe, so this story will never be forgotten. Robert made it to the finals. He didn't win. But Emma was in the front row every show, singing along. That was the only victory that mattered. Simon keeps Robert's construction helmet in his office. A reminder that sometimes the bravest performance is just showing up.